to everybody for what is the first of our forums in a series about a future made in Newcastle. And it's fantastic to see a good, strong turnout for our first of the series. Great representation of community members, of local businesses, workers, industry leaders, and everyone who cares deeply about where our city is headed. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Awabakal and Worimi peoples, and pay my respects to First Nations elders, past and present. And I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who join us here tonight. And as we gather for a future made in Newcastle, it's important that we recognise that First Nations people were this country's first creators, innovators, traders and engineers. And for tens of thousands of years, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples built sophisticated systems of knowledge, sustainable land and water management practices, and enduring trade networks and cultures. And that spirit of innovation, resilience and community remains deeply relevant to the conversation we're having tonight about Newcastle's future and how we create opportunity and build a more sustainable and inclusive economy for generations to come. I think just a couple of quick housekeeping notes before we kick off. We've got bathrooms, including accessible facilities and baby change facilities that are located to my right via the ramp. And in the very unlikely event that there is an emergency, please follow the directions of the university event staff and make your way calmly to the assembly area on Lehman Street. And finally, this is a community forum, so we welcome passionate discussion and differing views, but I just ask that everyone keeps the conversation respectful and civil throughout the evening. And I also want to acknowledge and thank the University of Newcastle for partnering with us tonight. It is great to see the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Alex Zielinski, here this evening, and a very big shout out to all the stall holders you'll find listed in your program, but I really encourage you to stay around after the panel discussion to have a chat and connect with them in the foyer. So that's housekeeping done. Tonight is all about Newcastle because Newcastle will be the birthplace of high-speed rail in Australia. If there's one thing we know about this city, we don't stand still. Newcastle has always been a city that adapts and evolves. From our proud industrial foundations to the diverse and innovative economy we're building today, ours is a story of resilience and transformation. And we've seen enormous change over recent decades. Industries have shifted, skylines have changed, and new opportunities have emerged. But through it all, what has remained constant is the strength of this community, the people, the skills, and the willingness to embrace what comes next. And that's exactly what this forum series is about. A Future Made in Newcastle is a space to bring people together, access trusted information, and debate those big ideas. Because the future doesn't just happen to places like Newcastle, it's something we shape together. And there are few opportunities more significant than the one we're discussing tonight, high-speed rail. A high-speed rail network connecting Newcastle and Sydney as the first stage has been long part of the national conversation, but now it's moving from concept through to reality. And when we think about what that could mean for our region, the possibilities are significant. Faster and more reliable connections, new jobs, investments, education and business, and a different way of thinking about housing, mobility and growth. But infrastructure alone doesn't define a future. What matters is how we prepare for it, plan for it, and make sure the benefits are shared across our community. And that's why conversations like this are so important. Tonight isn't just about hearing from experts, it's about bringing together different perspectives and asking the right questions now so that we're ready to make the most of what comes next. And to begin tonight's discussion, we're incredibly fortunate to be joined by our keynote speaker, Graham Nelms. I'm going to invite Graham to join me up on the stage. He's the General Manager of Customer, Place and Operations at the High Speed Rail Authority. Graham's at the centre of planning and delivering this project, and he'll be sharing insights into what lies ahead and what it will mean for our region. Please join me in giving a big warm Newcastle welcome to Graham Nellums.
Thank you, Sharon. Great to be back in Newcastle. We had a great industry event last month, but it's really great to be here in front of the community, back here in the Hunter tonight with you. So today I'm really going to talk about, I guess, really give you an overview of high-speed rail, where we're up to, the benefits, particularly for the region, and really what comes next on our journey. Just want to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country, so acknowledging the lands of the Worimi and Awabakal people that were here tonight, and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. So here's hopefully a short video that will play just to give you a quick teaser.
After 60 years of high-speed rail around the world, Australia's opportunity has arrived. Connecting our regions, cities and communities, high-speed rail will bring people and places closer together. There'll be new choices where to live, work and play. Like similar networks around the world, Australia's high-speed rail will support new housing opportunities, more jobs and a stronger economy. Work is now underway to connect Newcastle to Sydney on high-speed rail. Journey times will be cut from almost 3 hours to around 1 hour. From the Central Coast, it will take just 30 minutes to get to Newcastle or to Sydney. Journeys will be more than twice as fast as today, on trains travelling up to 320 kilometres an hour. High-speed rail between Newcastle and Sydney will boost the Australian economy by more than $250 billion, including new education, investment and tourism opportunities. That means creating the opportunity for 160,000 new homes, more than 99,000 new jobs added to the economy, and up to 15,000 construction jobs every year. As Australia's high-speed rail network grows, journey times will shrink. Around an hour and a half from Canberra to Sydney, 4 hours from Brisbane to Sydney, and 4 hours from Sydney to Melbourne. Regions and cities will be connected by quick, comfortable and reliable services on a standalone line. On board, there will be the things you expect: high-speed Wi-Fi, food and drinks, luggage storage, and easy access on and off the train. Start your workday on the train, not in the office. Head to a sporting event or concert in a capital city or a region and be back home the same night. For more than half a century, high-speed rail has reshaped nations and economies, creating new industries, new skills and new jobs. In Australia, it will do the same, bringing a big country closer together with faster connections, cleaner travel and stronger links between families, businesses and communities. Welcome aboard Australia's high-speed rail, delivering generations of opportunities.
Thank you. So welcome aboard. So great to be here, like I said. I'm from the High Speed Rail Authority. My name's Graham Nellums. I'm the General Manager for Customer, Place and Operations. The High Speed Rail Authority was established in 2023. So it's a dedicated authority, a Commonwealth entity that was established specifically to progress Australia's plans for high-speed rail, with a really clear remit around delivery, construction, then ultimately to oversee the operation of this national network, and which I'll get to in a moment. And do so, we know that we can't do that alone, and we've been engaging with the states and territories across the country as part of that journey. And we've already delivered, so we delivered a business case to government and to Infrastructure Australia in 2024, the end of 2024. We've also finished a blueprint for the national network that's looking at what does that national network from Brisbane through to Sydney, Canberra and Melbourne look like. And then importantly, and particularly for the Newcastle people, we've opened our community hub on Hunter Street. So, Scott Street. Scott Street, yeah. So if you haven't checked it out already, go and meet the team. They'll be happy to answer your questions. We've got some great models as well, and some great team members to talk to. So national high-speed rail. So often when we talk about high-speed rail, there's a really big focus on the tracks and the trains. For us at the authority, it's really about what it can do and what it does rather than what it is. And for us, that's really focused on the opportunities around jobs and housing, regional economic growth, tourism and manufacturing. So really giving people much more choice about where they can live and work, because you've really transformed the connectivity and accessibility from regions that have traditionally been constrained from a transport connectivity perspective. So really opening up those regions, opening up the opportunities for housing, for jobs, for investment, as well as for tourism. And then, as we'll talk about today, particularly around the manufacturing and particularly in the region. So how can we leverage the skills that we have to help deliver high-speed rail? And that's really big focus for us. So the national network, so as Sharon said, Newcastle to Sydney is the first stage of a national network that ultimately extends from Brisbane through Sydney, Canberra and then on to Melbourne. That's about 1,800 kilometres of dedicated high-speed rail line, so deliberately dedicated, so it is highly reliable and fast. And line 1, the Newcastle to Sydney section, is the first stage that we're progressing at the moment. That is our focus for this national network. You can see on the slide some of the travel times. They were also in the video. So 4 hours from Brisbane through to Sydney, or 4 hours from Melbourne to Sydney. And then as part of that first stage, 1 hour from Newcastle to Sydney, or as you saw, 30 minutes from the Central Coast to Newcastle, or from the Central Coast into Sydney. So really twice as fast as they are today in many cases. And if you're going from capital to capital, very attractive when you compare that to flying. And we see this as a national network that grows over time. So starting with that first stage from Newcastle to Sydney, so delivering those benefits early, and then as the network grows, thinking about how do we expand from the capitals to the surrounding regions, because we know from experience overseas, that's where a lot of the benefits can come. And then over time, then progressively connecting those sections so that we create that integrated line, 1,800 kilometres all the way down the east coast. So doing so in a staged approach, again, similar to, say, countries like Spain or France, who have delivered these high-speed rail networks over many years. Hopefully there's people in the room that have travelled on high-speed rail. I know I have, and it is a very popular way. We often when we talk to people about high-speed rail, a lot of people say, why don't we have that here? Because we've travelled on it over in Europe or in Asia. And what we're thinking around the product, if you have travelled, or hopefully if you haven't, one day you will, particularly here, is it's very similar to what you would experience. So a really reliable product, a tried and tested product. So we're not looking to reinvent the wheel. As you saw in the video, we've had high-speed rail around the world now for over 60 years. It started in Japan in 1964. Over 70,000 kilometres of high-speed rail in operation. So it is really proven. We're not looking to bring anything new, and in operation in over 20 countries. So really well proven. In terms of the product itself, fully accessible, so all the way from stations right onto the train, fully accessible experience, and then a highly reliable experience because of that dedicated network. And then when you're on board the train, we're thinking of multiple zones for different needs, different customer segments, different customer needs. So high-speed Wi-Fi, often when we talk to people, I don't know if that's because their current experience is grounded in the train that they have today, but a lot of people tell us they really want that high-speed Wi-Fi, so that uninterrupted connectivity for their journey. So whether they can work on the train or use entertainment or stay connected. Different food and beverage services as well as different luggage storage, premium zones and quiet zones. So again, quite a superior transport experience on board. We're also thinking beyond the tracks and the trains. So we know, again, from international experience, where these stations are, they're not decisions that get taken lightly, because we know it has the potential to really transform not just the precinct, but the region that it serves with integrated transport connections. So we're thinking about stations as destinations in their own right. So what we mean by that is locations where people may go because there's, they can meet friends, they can shop, they can do things that mean they're not necessarily just catching the train. So creating great places in and around these stations is something that we're really, really focused on, really unlocking the economic value as well as the social value from that investment in high-speed rail. And around the world, we see, an opportunity, whether that's St Pancras in London. The example here is the Hong Kong station for high-speed rail. So really quite significant and transformative investments that really see the benefits flow around the precincts that they serve. That's something that we're really quite focused on in the authority. What does it mean for the community, for stakeholders? I think we've sort of, certainly touched on all of the benefits, but I think housing is a really significant one. Like I mentioned, the opportunity to really connect and transform that accessibility to regions that may have the ability to support more housing, but often that ability is constrained by transport connectivity. So that's a significant opportunity. Opportunity around jobs as well, so being able to better connect economic activity centres, attract more investment. Again, we've seen that overseas where high-speed rail helps bring in investment into regions that wouldn't otherwise have attracted that. Access to education, so being able to connect, and if you look at the line between Newcastle and Sydney, connect all of those centres that have existing educational facilities, universities, but over time, better connect them for those students. Medical services, again, when we talk to people in, say, the Central Coast, Lake Macquarie, getting to facilities like John Hunter Hospital is often a challenge. So being able to better connect those regions with high-speed rail and then with integrated connections to get them where they need to, so they're not having to spend, say, an overnight trip just because they've got a specialist appointment. They can do that with high-speed rail and return the same day is really quite significant. And then, of course, being able to better connect family and friends because you're bringing that country and that region really closer together. So why Newcastle to Sydney? Hopefully I'm preaching to the converted here, but we see this as a really nationally significant corridor. It's significant growth and significant potential over time. We've got existing transport connections that are really, I think, quite constrained. We've got the M1 very busy, and often when there is disruption, that's a really significant impact to the regional and national productivity. And then we've got a rail line that, again, is really quite busy, 15 million trips a year, the busiest intercity corridor we have in the country, shared between passenger, whether that's intercity or regional, and freight. So the opportunity there to support that growth and that potential is really quite constrained by those transport connections. So we see this and the opportunity with high-speed rail to really help unlock those benefits, and that's really why we're very focused on Newcastle to Sydney as the first stage of this national network. We've done a lot of work, as I mentioned at the start. The business case that we delivered to government in 2024 really looked very closely and sharply at what are the benefits of high-speed rail. What it found was that travel time of say 1 hour from Newcastle to Sydney and those station locations that you see there really unlock the opportunity for around 160,000 new homes, a lot of those in the Hunter, Lake Macquarie regions, and the opportunity for 99,000 new jobs because we're better connecting those economic activity centres, which then improves productivity and attracts investment. And overall, what we found was that delivers a significant economic boost of $250 billion. So again, you start to see the transformative impact of this connectivity on the region is significant. So for us, as I mentioned a little at the start, we're really focused on tried and trusted, so technology, so not looking to reinvent the wheel. As I mentioned, we've got experience, and we can, I guess, look across the world, lessons learned from other operations and networks, and look to apply that here. So that's helping us to reduce risk in delivery, as well as much greater certainty about what it will take to deliver this project. We really want to work with industry as well, so we've kicked off an industry process. We were up here, like I mentioned, in April, starting that industry process. So that is starting the expression of interest process for 2 of our major delivery packages. So we'll start working very, very closely with industry very shortly, later in this year. Sustainability and net zero is a really key one, not just during construction, but also during operation, and the potential with Newcastle to Sydney to shift cars off the M1, so around 10,000 cars a day off the M1 as a result of this project is significant. But then if you think about the national network and the opportunity to provide a more attractive alternative to, say, flying, the ability to then support Australia's net zero targets, again, is significant. We want to work very closely with the community and with stakeholders. Like I said, we've got the hub here in Newcastle. We've already started working with the community and stakeholders, and we know we get much better project outcomes when we work really closely with those community members and stakeholders right throughout the process. And we've also been working really closely ever since the authority was established, again recognising this is the first stage in Australia. What can we learn from overseas? So what can we learn from Asia, from Europe, from others around where high-speed rail has worked and what hasn't worked so well, and really, again, just applying those lessons around major projects as part of this. So we recently had Minister Catherine King up here in Newcastle back in February to commit to moving into the development phase for the project. So that's taking us from that planning phase we did during the business case into the development phase. And this is a really deliberate phase where we want to work closely with stakeholders, community and industry to be much, I guess, to help de-risk the project, to help provide much greater certainty about what this project will cost, how long it will take to deliver, and what are the benefits of the project, and really help firm those up for government and come back in 2028 with a much clearer view around what it will take to deliver this project. In parallel, this is a really big investment, there's no doubt about that. So really exploring what are those opportunities for funding and financing this project is something that we're very focused on. And then being construction ready in 2028. So what can we do from now, working with industry, stakeholders, community, firming up benefits, firming up costs, what it would take to deliver, coming back to government in 2028 to say we are construction ready. I'll talk a little bit about the sort of, I guess, the project scope. So again, what we found through the business case that stacked up was economically viable and technically feasible was a project that extended 194 kilometres from a station in Newcastle at Broadmeadow, through Lake Macquarie at Morisset, through the Central Coast station at Gosford, and then into Sydney Central, Parramatta, and then on to Western Sydney Airport. Acknowledging that a lot of that corridor, there are some topographical challenges and other challenges and constraints. So that did mean that close to 60% of that corridor is underground, but we are very blessed with some great ground and geological conditions here in this part of the world. But yeah, just given the national park and minimising impacts on urban areas, landowners, First Nations and others, the need to have that tunnelled section. But we'll work through that with more geotechnical testing. You probably saw 18 months ago, we were out testing in a few locations, a few boreholes up and down the corridors to sort of firm up where that corridor, underground corridor might go. And we'll do further work around that over the next 2 years. But really that development phase is working with those community members, doing that geotechnical testing, starting the land process, the approvals process, and then coming back to help really inform government in making a confident decision around proceeding and investing in this project. And then subject to that, we would then move into the delivery phase and started the construction. So advanced manufacturing. So I think really a project of this scale, it's significant, and I think there's a real opportunity here. And what we're looking to do I think really for the first time on a major infrastructure project is really embed from the outset the opportunities for advanced manufacturing. And what we mean by that is rather than really assembling like we typically do or traditionally do on these big projects where a lot of work happens on site, where we bring all the materials, all the workers come in and build the infrastructure on site, how can we try to minimise as much as possible and do more of that assembly using modern methods of construction at a dedicated facility? And really that's about improving and delivering a much more efficient delivery process, improving productivity, as well as making it much more safer for the workers themselves. And so we're looking to do that in each of our delivery packages, and how can we really embed that from the outset. And that's, I guess, from a project sense, but when you think about the opportunities regionally, and particularly for regions like the Hunter, establishing dedicated facilities that could potentially support, not just high speed, but go on to support other industries is really significant. You're helping invest in that workforce, the capabilities, you're uplifting, and then over time, they become, I guess, a workforce that's then fit for the future. So going on and helping them position for more opportunities. And that's really the legacy that these facilities can provide to a region, again, like the Hunter. The other side of it is, I guess, local manufacturing. Again, a project of this scale, huge opportunities for local manufacture. We've got a region here in the Hunter that we know has the ability to support a project like this. We've got a transitioning workforce, huge opportunity there to really, I guess, leverage that and build upon that. That's really what we're focusing on. And we are embedding a lot of that in a lot of our procurement, so starting that process now with industry, being really clear with industry partners about what our expectations are with local manufacture and local participation. We're also asking suppliers to respond to the question around what would it take. So what we mean by that is when we talk about, say, for example, manufacturing of high-speed trains, acknowledging that we haven't built high-speed trains, this is the first stage. But we want to understand and ask the question, what would it take to help maximise the opportunity for local manufacture in building those trains? And it may be on a journey where we start initially, and then over time we build up that capability and build up that participation as we build up the skills and workforce to do that. And that's really what we're focusing on. Around the Made in Australia as well, I think acknowledging this is a national project, we want to think about Made in Australia, and particularly Made in the Hunter, leverage those skills and build on that, and then think about what are the opportunities in this 2-year development phase to start building up the skills and capabilities, the workforce, the apprentices now, so that we are ready come 2028 to then move into delivery. Touched on this a little bit, but probably worth just explaining again the shift in, or the opportunity to really support net zero by shifting cars off the road, initially with Newcastle to Sydney, but then significantly as we grow the national network and shift, provide that alternative to say flying, acknowledging that by 2030 transport would be the largest source of greenhouse emissions in the country. So again, we've seen overseas the opportunity with high-speed rail, which is a much more energy efficient, and in this case, within Australia, would be completely 100% emission-free. So again, being able to support those targets with a project like this is significant. And then lastly, a big plug for our team here, Anita Brown and the team who lead our community hub, the National High Speed Rail Hub there on Scott Street. A great opportunity, that's what it looks like inside. Great space to come in and meet the team, ask you questions and learn really more about high-speed rail, and not just now, but as the project evolves and develops. So by all means, please go and check it out. And with that, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Graham. That's a really excellent sort of starting board for this panel discussion that we're now going to move into. So I'd just like to thank everybody who took a bit of time to submit questions for tonight's Q&A. We've received many more questions than we're going to have time to answer tonight, but I am going to make sure that we've covered all of the emerging themes that you have raised. So I'd now like to invite our panellists up onto the stage to join Graham. We've got, first up, Bob Hawes, the CEO of Hunter Business. Bob brings a very strong understanding of the needs and opportunities for local business community here, and so please give a big welcome to Bob. Alice Thompson. Alice is the CEO of the Committee for Hunter, who's been a leading voice in long-term regional planning and ensuring our growth is both smart and sustainable. Give it up for Alice. And Laura Eadie, Executive Director of the Institute for Regional Futures here at the University of Newcastle. Her work is focusing on the opportunities, challenges and long-term trends shaping regional communities like ours. Okay, first question I'm going to hit across to you, Bob. So, Bob, Business Hunter works closely with our unions, employers and industry right across the region. So you've got a really clear sense of what local businesses need to grow and to stay competitive. With high-speed rail potentially reshaping how people, goods and talent move between Newcastle and Sydney, what are the biggest opportunities you see for local businesses in our economy?
Thanks, Sharon. Yes, I think there are lots of opportunities. I think Business Hunter is 140 years, or with its forefathers, is 140 years old this year. Back in 1886, we can look back and see that back then one of the issues that was concerning the original board was about transport links and connectivity of this region, and particularly to Sydney. So you come forward and some things change, some stay the same. But I think through that time, what we've been able to do here in the Hunter is develop a distinct DNA that can support transport and logistics. We've built trains here before. We used to make the steel that made the rails on which the trains could go on, but that is still around in the country at least. We've got businesses and services that can support the maintenance of train services. We've got an education institution that can educate people who want a career pathway into that particular industry or business. And of course, what we're now getting is a community of significant size to be able to support infrastructure through custom to make it viable. And I think what's happened at Newcastle Airport in recent times is an indication of that travel urge to be able to, go and when you provide something, people will use it. So I think there is a real opportunity. As I say, it's in the DNA. Those skills haven't been lost. They're still here, notwithstanding that this region has an enormous task ahead of it as it transforms or transitions into new energy economy and other ambitions that it has before it. We still have that diversity in industry and business that can support a project like this in so many ways. And I know the HunterNet guys are here in force today, and they've got a stand out there later, and they can go into chapter, verse and detail of not only making the nuts and bolts that can hold bits of trains together, but right through to those, as I say, those high-level service capability that's going to be needed to support it.
Thank you. Alice, I'm going to hit the next question to you. So the Committee for the Hunt is focused on some long-term regional planning and making sure we grow in a smart, sustainable way. High-speed rail has the potential to fundamentally reshape how our regions grow, from housing to transport corridors and jobs. And from your perspective, what are the key planning and policy decisions that we need to prioritise now to ensure that this kind of a once-in-a-lifetime infrastructure delivers not just growth, but the right kind of growth for Newcastle and the Hunter?
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. So what we know that building a railway alone does not deliver benefits or activation. We already have advice from Infrastructure Australia, the government's independent infrastructure advisor. It's talked about where the needs are and where the risks are. These include network integration with the existing public transport and transport system, as well as housing. So let's talk network integration. Public transport is a really complex system. So just in Newcastle and the Hunter alone, we have buses, ferry, rail, light rail. You can even look at taxis and Uber and active transport as part of that mix. We all know that current services remain below par. They're not really of the level and scale of service that fits, I think, a modern economy, an economy of our size or a population of our size, but also where population are and where they need to travel to and from. That has certainly changed over time. So what we see with high-speed rail is you're putting a new weight into a complex system, and this is an opportunity to throw all those cards up into the air and to lay them down into a truly integrated network. And we do need a seamless public transport network, not a disconnected high-speed rail from everything else, because you'll be just as annoyed as what I am as a high-speed rail train pulls in and you see your connecting bus or light rail basically pull out for the station. Network integration, this is a New South Wales government responsibility, not just a Commonwealth responsibility on high-speed rail. So housing. Again, building a rail is not necessarily going to deliver the housing supply at the numbers that we've seen in the business case and that are on offer here. That's only really going to happen when the station precincts and the corridors are planned to unlock that development capacity and capability that is enabled, that's released by high-speed rail. And what we've learnt about urban planning too, you don't just build places for housing and places for jobs, you're introducing more need to travel. We really need to get jobs closer to home, and again, it's that integrated precinct and corridor strategy that we're looking at. Again, looking at you, New South Wales Government, it's time for your leadership. Now, these are not decisions for the future. These are actions for now, because they will directly influence government's investment decision, and it may ultimately determine whether the project goes ahead or not following this development phase that we're currently in.
Thank you. I have a sense of urgency. I'm sure everyone else does now. Laura, through the Institute for Regional Futures at the University of Newcastle, you bring together research, education, industry, government and community to help regions turn major investments into the long-term skills, capabilities and opportunities. So high-speed rail isn't just an infrastructure project, it's a chance to build those skills, strengthen collaboration and grow to the next generation of regional expertise. From your perspective, what role can universities and research institutions play in workforce training, in applied research and industry collaboration, and what needs to be put in place now to ensure that those benefits are embedded in Newcastle and the Hunter for the long term?
Thanks, Sharon. It's a good question. I really see three roles as you outline them for universities. So there's obvious one of training the workforce. It is our core business. But we also solve real world problems, and that's part of what the institutes do. And then finally, connecting people across the system so we can share knowledge and make sure those jobs that have been mentioned stay at the cutting edge. So on workforce training, for this particular project, there's both a need for scale and specificity. So a lot of people are going to be employed if the project goes ahead, but we're seeing critical shortages already in things like surveying and power engineering. And that's addressing that means the university needs a more flexible and connected pathways. At Newcastle, we're already investing in that. So we've streamlined engineering. There's a common first year now, so that people don't have to specialise until second year. Refreshed our programs to keep them contemporary, invested in more hands-on immersive learning at the engineering campus. We're also reintroducing surveying, and importantly, this is going to have a flexible part-time option so that mature age students can enter that. And we're building capacity in power engineering, which is something that's also needed for the renewable energy rollout. And I think very importantly, we're also working closely with TAFE. So we're looking at a more joined up tertiary model so that people have clearer applied pathways into those skills. On applied research, it's really, I guess what the institutes do is working alongside industry on real place-based challenges. So a key issue for my institute here is social licence, particularly that early and genuine engagement with community and Indigenous landholders in route planning, because if we don't get that right, you don't have a route, and then there's no point having surveyors trained or the geotechnical engineers. And I think that's critical. The Indigenous community is critical, not just for respecting cultural heritage, but actually making sure that the economic opportunities are genuinely inclusive. We're also building that capability into the engineering courses. So all the professional engineering courses will have a cultural competency component. And then I can't go on, Sharon, without mentioning your help in investing in facilities like the Future Fabrication Facility, which will be very important for the modern manufacturing approach. Look, I mentioned the third role of convening, so really bringing together industry, government, community, and making sure the knowledge that's developed through projects like these is actually retained locally. I think that knowledge exchange is incredibly important. You asked me what we need to do now. I think it's some of what we're already doing, so already building the skills where we see gaps, but it's also about locking in long-term partnerships and ensuring that the structures are set up so that knowledge transfer from international firms is retained locally. And I think if we do that, this project becomes a catalyst for Newcastle's industrial renewal, which is a really exciting prospect.
Thank you. Back to you, Graham. So one of the really strong messages coming through in the High Speed Rail program is the emphasis on jobs, advanced sovereign manufacturing and a genuine made in Australia approach. So from the High Speed Rail Authority's perspective, how's the project being set up to maximise Australian manufacturing and workforce capability? And what does that mean in practical terms for jobs and industry opportunities in regions like ours as that delivery begins?
Yeah, excellent question, Sharon. I think the presentation gave you a taste of that. I think it's probably worth just maybe reflecting on, there's a big focus on the tracks and the trains and the infrastructure. But when you look around the world, there's a whole industry that goes into delivering those projects, those networks. They evolve over time, they grow those networks, and then they support the ongoing operations and maintenance. So there are significant opportunities to do the same here as we deliver this network. When you think about the opportunities for jobs, for growing those regional economies, uplifting the skills in those regions, I think is significant. Again, we've seen that around the world. We're starting that work now with industry to embed that now, and that is significant. And I think, yeah, it's easy to sort of think about the infrastructure and look at the images, but there is a whole opportunity there sitting behind that around industry, which we're really laser focused on, particularly for regions like the Hunter. In the development phase, in the next 2 years, we want to really get that right. We want to work with industry, understand what would it take to really, like I said, optimise and maximise the opportunities to make more here in regions like the Hunter. We want to look at opportunities to help build the workforce of the future, so invest in the skills, the capabilities and the workforce through things like advanced manufacturing, embed those into our contracts so that we're leaving that legacy for regions for future generations. So that is really significant. And as I mentioned, the other big opportunity, which I think is really a first for a major project in Australia, is that advanced manufacturing. So often it's talked about or it's in the sort of R&D phase, but for us, we're moving beyond that and really embedding that from the outset to say, for each of our delivery packages, we want you to use advanced manufacturing. We want you to use modern methods of construction, not just because it's more productive and more efficient, but it's safer for workers. It's also leaving a legacy. So creating these facilities in these regions where they can go on to support other industries. They don't have to move around to follow the work. You can really focus and establish those facilities in an ongoing way that supports those regions. And I think the key ingredients for that really are here in the Hunter. And I think that's a huge opportunity that we're really quite excited about as we take this project forward.
Thank you. So just before we go into the audience questions, I just wanted to ask each of you to very briefly reflect on the long term. So when you look 20 to 30 years ahead, how has high-speed rail transformed Australia and regions like the Hunter? Bob, I think I'm going to go to you first, and if others want to share reflections, jump in. But this is like a rapid-fire reflection now.
Crikey, modern. I first came to Newcastle on what was then still the Flyer, back in the early 80s. And
there's a few of us that remember that, Bob.
Yeah, remember that. And I'm a young bloke, so I must have been a baby. No, not really. Look, I really think that those transformational opportunities that come your way don't come very often. And this, and I recognise straight off the bat through business here, and I'm sure through the community, there is as much scepticism and opposition about a high-speed rail project as there is support. And that's what it's going to have to live with. But these transformational opportunities challenge us in that way. They challenge your thinking. They challenge your vision. This is not what we can just go out, see and touch unless we've experienced it overseas. And I think the transformational opportunity that we look back at when this is complete, whenever that may be, will be well regarded, as have been modern advances in other forms of transport that we've seen in this nation over the last 30 to 40 years.
Anyone else for a snapshot of 20 years' time?
I'll give a classic politician's response. I'm going to answer the question I wish I was asked. I'd like to also, like Bob, reflect on some observations in my career. So I was really lucky to be working under then Minister for Infrastructure, Anthony Albanese, on his high-speed rail study way back in 2013. And then I worked on the Turnbull when I was in his office, his response to faster rail. And I can say that this is the reddest hot go that we've seen of high-speed rail in this country. It's the furthest that it's gone, and it has learned and it's adapted and it's been informed by all those previous approaches. We do know that big visions like this are possible. Look at Western Sydney Airport, Badgerys Creek. That took over 60 years to basically get off the ground. And again, I'm really proud of the role that I had in that development, where we have 1 in 8 kids in Australia growing up and whole families disconnected from jobs, education, services and opportunities. So it's my mission to secure that for the Hunter as well. So we've got IA's recommendations to proceed, we've got the PM's backing, we've got the development phase now underway and locked in, we've got Newcastle's biggest champion here backing that project as well. So it's time for us to stop narking at the side, act like this project is going ahead, and now put all of our focus into how do we make this more feasible, how do we get those tracks into the ground, how do we work to increase the benefits that can be realised by our economy, by our community. And we really must, because so much is at stake here for the Hunter. We are a $96 billion economy in massive economic transition. Tens of thousands of jobs are at risk as this occurs. The Hunter is central to Australia's defence, sovereign industry, energy and climate future. All Australians have an interest in the Hunter making it. And this mega project will be the singular biggest driver of jobs and growth and opportunity in our region and across the eastern seaboard for decades to come. Securing our future, I sound like a broken record here. It needs all 3 levels of government working together on high-speed rail with business, industry, unions and the community, just as we should expect them to be doing.
Hey.
Look, I'll keep it short. For me, if I think 20 to 30 years, the projects are a raging success, such that the opportunities it's created for young people are ones they take for granted. So I actually, when I think about this project, I think about my grandmother telling me just how controversial the Sydney Harbour Bridge was. And I believe she was one of I don't know how this happened because she was from Adelaide, but she was one of a number of school students who were the first to walk across the bridge. Nothing like putting kids in the line of fire, I guess. But I think about that project and just how controversial it was, and yet how it's, the connectivity it provided to Sydney and the growth opportunities that created, we now take for granted. So I'd like to see the same from this. So, real capability with a skilled workforce, stronger relationships amongst the community and particularly with Indigenous communities, and then that industrial capability and system that builds on what we've already got, as Bob mentioned, so that young people here can choose a knowledge job or a knowledge with your hands on, using your brain and your hands, advanced manufacturing job, and they don't even know that they might not have had that choice.
Thank you. Graham, what do we look like in 20 or 30 years?
20 years, it'll be transformational. Again, look around the world, it's really transformed regions. Newcastle to Sydney in an hour, incredible. And you think about the national network, the ability to connect half the country in less than half a day is enormous. We think about the opportunities we sort of touched on around housing, economic growth, investment attraction is significant, and ideally I sort of touched on the ability to make trains. We know there's countries around the world that have not just started making trains with the transfer technology, they go on to then export them. So that is significant. So yeah, for me, I think it's leaving that legacy.
I kind of feel like we might have answered the first question that I was about to ask you in all of those answers, because Greg from Adamstown gave me a question that I've heard 1,000 times in Newcastle, and it was really directed to that scepticism. And, you know, it's a good, healthy thing to have scepticism around, but it's that sort of, you know, why the hell should we believe you this time around? You know, we've heard this story. I'm a Novocastrian. I've grown up here listening to high-speed rail stories for decades like everybody else. But I think I would just lean into what Alice said, you know, like we're just at a moment in history where we've got a Prime Minister who is a self-confessed infrastructure nerd and a train nerd in particular, so very helpful, and a Minister who's really kind of lent in. I would just see this as, you know, the next biggest opportunity for Newcastle post the closure of BHP. You know, I remember growing up here, my dad was at BHP. I remember everyone thinking this town would be written off after the closure of BHP. And you look around today, nothing further could be from the truth, right? So I just think that high-speed rail is going to just set us up in ways that are even unimaginable right now. And but they're going to be good. But I think that, you know, the sorts of jobs and the kinds of things that get attracted here are I don't think anyone predicted, say, with the construction of high-speed rail to Birmingham in the UK, that the financial sector was going to use to move to Birmingham, right? But that's been one of the great consequences, one of many. So I think there's great times ahead. Hopefully, Greg, you don't feel too slighted by the fact that your question sort of got answered directly by a lot of people. We're going to move on to the next one. The other thing I would say just about in terms of appetite here for high-speed rail, of course there are healthy sceptics out there, but High Speed Rail Authority, I think you mentioned it in your remarks, Graham, that they hosted a forum here last month for interested industry partners, 740 odd entities, people and businesses and industry sector turned up, including right across Australia, but internationals as well. So there is appetite, absolutely. And I think it's our moment for history. It's our moment to shine, and we should all start leaning in very heavily. So that's part of tonight. The next question I'm going to take, and I can see Lee Shears is right down there in the front row. This is from Lee Shears of Hunter Workers. The Hunters are already experiencing the impacts of energy transition, and for many workers, the stakes are immediate and personal. High-speed rail is often framed as nation-building, but past major projects in Australia have too often relied on imported materials and labour. What concrete commitments are being made to ensure this project delivers long-term, unionised local jobs in steel, fabrication, rolling stock and apprenticeships? And how can those commitments be locked in so they can't be unwound by future governments? That's a very strong Lee Shears question. I love it. So, I don't know, Graham, you've already touched on some of those points. What can you say to somebody like Lee heading up, you know, the union workforce in this region?
Yeah, I think maybe to build on what I said earlier, I think we are working with industry, and it is something that we've been really clear on, that we do want to see strong local participation in these projects and this, you know, these contracts to deliver this project. You know, build up the skills, work with those, with the supply chain, work out, I guess, where we are right now with the supply chain and where we need to be to deliver this. You saw earlier, the opportunity for 15,000 jobs during construction is significant. That's enormous. And then you think about the flow-on impacts to those surrounding regions. So it is something that we are very focused on and very keen to work with industry to make sure we deliver on that.
Sharon, I've got a comment on
Alice?
that too. So high-speed rail as our economy changes, a wide range of jobs are actually going to be affected, from white-collar through to blue-collar. We've got a number of, say, service sector engineers who are also affected, who have been providing services into coal supply chains. So these jobs are actually being created today, not just tomorrow. You're building your office, high-quality, good public service jobs here in the Hunter, but also contracts are going to be signed, and I know a lot of firms that are going to it. I would also say that the baton is over to the Hunter as well. So you have Tim Parker, you have Graham sitting here saying, we want to build Hunter, we want to create local jobs here. It is our job to get in front of them and say, what do we need in order to create that? Particularly Hunternet and industry that's here. There's been a lot of work through the Australian Railway Association too, really looking at productive strategies and manufacturing. So again, it's not, if we want those benefits and those opportunities, we shouldn't be passive. We have a government that's opened. It's up to us to say what we need to be able to deliver on our shared objectives.
Thank you. Okay, Amanda from Hamilton has asked, how can high-speed rail be used to genuinely expand housing supply in regional centres like Newcastle rather than simply shifting demand from Sydney? Who wants to have a crack at that one?
I'll have a go.
Laura, over to you.
Yeah, look, I think it is important to acknowledge that there is that risk. So this is not an idle question. What I would say, though, is that you either get it really right. So if we do it the way Alice has outlined, you get it really right. And not only do you have better housing supply here, but you've actually got jobs as well. Whereas if you get it wrong, you end up like high-speed rail 2 in the UK, which not really where we want to go. There's really good work from the OECD 2014, which says, look, it's clear that high-speed rail can work well if you integrate it in with broader regional growth. And so what that means is connecting growth centres. I think the High-Speed Rail Authority and the federal government have made a really smart choice with their first line, because Newcastle is a growth centre. We're already seeing that. And then the next bit is about getting the infrastructure, investment attraction, job skills all lined up, so that when the project starts to come through, you see that growth really quickly. And if I can just touch back on the previous question, Sharon, I think the other thing that's important here in terms of those the skilled workforce being ready for the jobs when the high-speed rail comes on, is that we have a stepping stone series of projects leading to that, and I think the New South Wales government might have a pretty important role to play there.
Thank you. Okay, we've got one from Richard in Birmingham Gardens, and Richard's asked, will high-speed rail strengthen Newcastle as its own destination or risk it becoming a satellite to Sydney's economy? Spoken like a true Novocastrian, Richard.
It is a great question. I think it touches on, I think, what you mentioned, Alice, that we need, it's not just the authority that's delivering this in a silo. We need to work with state and local partners to really make the most of this transformational investment. We can't do it alone. We need to work with Department of Planning, Department of Transport, everybody, to really realise those benefits. And I think that's really what we've tried to start with the development phase. We want to work with those partners to make sure we get it right. We've got the station locations, but we need to start thinking about those broader areas to make the most of it.
Alice, Bob?
I think that there's a danger in some of this stuff that we do overthink and we overcomplicate what some of these ramifications are going to be. I meet a lot of businesses in Sydney, and this does come up. They're worried that it's going to be an avenue for their workforce to jump on a train and go to Sydney instead of staying here. But I think realistically, whatever the price for tickets going to be, unless they're getting paid or unless they've got a particularly good job, that sort of drain from Newcastle is not what it's about. What it is about is just improving connectivity we have. So it builds on those existing connections. But I do understand where people are coming from. There's a lot of, as you said, spoken like a true Novocastrian here in Sharon. Here, a lot of people are resistant to change. They like what they have now. They don't want things to be the new. But we've gone past a threshold sometime in the last 15, 20 years that means that we've gone from a big country town to very much a regional city, and a region that has enormous growth potential, which is being realised whether we like it or not. It's a market economy. If there are opportunities there and people see those opportunities, they'll be taken, and they may come out in some of those areas that we didn't intend or didn't anticipate, but I don't think they'll all be negative. We've got to understand that, yes, there's probably will be some negative outcrops that come out as a consequence of this sort of project being built. But I really think that you've got to take that on balance, and there's so many things, even the skills part. There won't be a Bachelor of High Speed Rail required. you'll be able to go to university or be a tradesperson, and whether you're a boilermaker or through to an engineer in particular capability, and this might be a source of employment for you, but it won't be a portal or an ecosystem all by itself that doesn't interact with the rest of our economy. And that's what I think we've got to realise and understand, that because there are enormous, just with any other project that we get here that comes through that spends a lot of money in a regional economy can make a significant difference.
Yep. Alice, you look like you're a champion bit there.
We absolutely will not become a dormitory suburb. So this is linking Australia's largest city with Australia's largest regional economy. As Graham described, this is the busiest pairing in the whole of Australia. So really what this is about in the first instance is making the journey better for those of us, including me, that need to go to Sydney every now and then for business or for health services or sometimes entertainment or to catch up with my friends and family, about making that better in our lifetime, please. But we are also, I have moved from Sydney. I'm originally not from Sydney, but I've been up here for 7 years, and this is about providing competition and options for where people live. Now, if you can live in Sydney and say that it's a better place to live than Newcastle, well, then bloody go for it. I mean, I'm certainly staying up here, but what we need to do is make sure with that measured planning, infrastructure investment and housing growth is that we don't undermine the very things that make Newcastle better and competitive. That's quality of life, that's a level of not crowding, and it's also the housing affordability, which I know it is relative to incomes into an area, but it's a level playing field of badness out there in Australia, and it is much worse in Sydney. So again, getting ahead of that curve, making sure that we don't go the way that other cities have gone. But yeah, good luck to you if you want to live in Sydney, I reckon.
I don't know anyone on that train. Any closing sort of comments from either Laura or yourself, Graham? Because I know I'm getting the signal that we're running out of time already, which is insane. I'm sorry, but...
I think just quickly on this point, a big plug for our business case, because there's 300 pages on our website. So if you
and you're all going home to read it
absolutely,
tonight, aren't you? Yeah.
But it is a really good point, because it is something that we looked at explicitly around who will use high-speed rail, and I think what we found was it's not just commuters, it's not just people travelling 9 to 5 for a job in Sydney. It's actually people travelling for tourism or social visits or business-to-business trips, because, as Alice said, you've got two very strong regional hubs either end and a very fast-growing, rapidly growing region in between. And I think, what we found was actually commuting trips was actually relatively small, or proportionally smaller than some of the other trips, which is, I think, really what we're talking about.
Terrific.
Oh, look, I can't leave this one go. I do think a lot about the industrial future for Newcastle. So not to mention too much about where I've lived before. I have worked on Western Sydney, and the issue governments are facing there about getting the jobs to population ratio improved are starting from way behind where Newcastle is. So I'm not only excited to live in Newcastle, I'm working here because I just think this region has so much capacity, as Bob said. And I think, to put in a plug for my employer, I think the university is doing some really great stuff to drive advanced skills. We've got our future fabrication facility already up and running, and a new energy skills hub coming online in 2027. So, I think people will, as I said, in the future, want to stay here, live here, work here, study here. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't focus on this region.
It is an exciting time to be in Newcastle, no doubt about that. And I think the work that's been done at the university is really getting very well complemented by the work and the transition we're trying to do in the TAFE space. In regions like this, TAFE is still a really important institution, and I really love the work that the university is trying to do to smooth out that transition between the two institutions too. It should never be as clunky as it is, but and that's why offering up free TAFE places to all the areas where we've got skill shortages has been a great initiative. I don't know if people know this, but we've got a housing shortage going on in Australia. We're looking for construction workers. 50% of the national take-up of new apprentices into construction is here in Newcastle. So good on you in Newcastle for encouraging your sons and daughters to go into the trades. They're areas of great need, and it's still a noble profession in this part of the world to go to TAFE as well as university. So can you please give a very big hand to these amazing panellists? I know there were more questions than we could possibly get through tonight, but I hope that you have found this really interesting, and a big applause to yourselves for coming out on a Friday night, giving it up for high-speed rail. Thank you.